Hi, welcome to TierOne Real Estate. My name is Jairo, and today I'm here to talk to you about a lot of different property management concepts. We are a full-service real estate and property management company, whether it's buying, selling, or managing property. All those things are things that we can help you with, or someone that you may know. Today we're going to be talking about how to handle bad tenants. So I brought my notes out here just to make sure that I stayed on topic and that I covered the things that I wanted to cover today. So how to handle bad tenant is going to be the topic of today, and finding some solutions for that. Odds are no one signs up for a bad tenant, but the truth is it is a reality of life and it can happen. So let's start by giving you the reverse. What's an example of a good tenant? Ideally, you want someone that pays their rent on time, pays it in full, and that is going to contact you whenever there is a problem with the property so that you can facilitate that solution. So with that being said, let's go with what we started talking about. Well, what would be a bad tenant, seen as how I just covered what a good tenant would be? Well, maybe someone that doesn't pay rent on time. They're always late. You're always having to call them and almost feel like you're hassling them to pay rent, which is something they previously agreed upon. And maybe they're not getting along well with the neighbors, within the complex, or the neighbors next door if they're living in a single family home. Maybe you get a lot of complaints from, maybe it's the local police department, from the other neighbors, or from your current, owner of this property, who may not be very happy because they drove by. So these are all bad scenarios that we want to be able to avoid. None of those are good, but they do happen. I just want to be realistic. So if you're having to chase them down for rent, there's a few things that I want you to keep in mind. Number one, you got to understand, what your rights are as a landlord overseeing property management. You got to understand the rights of the owner, and what they can and cannot do, and you got to understand the rights of the tenants. So I wanted to pre-frame it with that. And with that being said, you got to make sure that you're taking the proper steps if ever you're having a bad tenant. So the number one thing you need to make sure is that you're communicating. You want to make sure that the communication is key from the beginning, that it's clear and concise, and that they understand the message. Okay? When you set the bar at high level of expectations from them, then they know what they're getting into. That way you don't get any surprises. Okay? And anything that you do have an agreement upon, or any information that they need to know, must be put in writing. Not just the lease agreement, but if there's anything in addition to, where there's property specific, or if it's rules and guidelines specific to that property or to that home, make sure that they have a copy of it, that you communicate that information with them so that they're able to understand, and if they ever have a question, refer back to it. So one big thing that you definitely want to avoid is any kind of lawsuit. Okay? So when we're dealing with, when we're thinking about worst case scenario, odds are you have someone that's maybe done some of the following that I've described, whether it's paying rent or not paying rent, paying rent late, or paying that, not on time consistently, or not paying it in full, or where they started to accrue a balance, or maybe they're just being very, very negative towards the people around them, and maybe they've had the police called on them several times. Well, now you're at the point where you really need to take full further action, and you need to know how to go about taking that action. Because if you can't just, this is not like back in the day where you used to be able to just, landlords would literally, not that long ago, if you didn't comply with whatever they needed you to pay, they could just take your stuff, toss it out, and lock the doors or change the locks. That's no longer something that you can do that easy. There's rules and laws and codes that you need to abide by. Otherwise, you can get yourself, as the property manager or as the property owner, into a lot of trouble, even though you think you're doing the right thing. Okay, so making sure that you're serving the right notices, making sure you're serving those notices on time, that they're dated, that they're signed, that they're the right type of notice, and that you've given the right amount of time frame, because a lot of these things are time sensitive, and making sure all those steps are taken, because it's happened where if you missed a step, or if you didn't serve a proper notice to a person, then that can come back and bite you, or they can come back and use that against you. And that's how a lot of times people in the property management world end up getting into trouble is either because they forgot to do something, or they did something that they weren't supposed to, or they did it wrong. And that is something that you definitely want to avoid at all costs. Not just because it's a huge pain in the neck, it's a hassle, but it's also can be very costly, if you're having, especially if you're having to involve, any lawyers. A few of the quick tips, just before I end this. So make sure that, you're screening the tenant, credit and background check the references, their previous landlord, check their employment to make sure that overall that they are who they say they are, that their story checks out. Oftentimes I come to find that whenever someone's a little sketchy, their story doesn't match up somewhere. So making sure that their story matches up. In regards to doing walkthroughs, so make sure if you're, I don't know what your policy or procedures are, but if you're going to do a walkthrough before you rent to the place, to the person, maybe doing a walkthrough in the property a couple times a year or quarterly, and make sure that you or someone within your company, or if you're managing this yourself, you drive through the property, drive around, once a month or so, just to make sure to keep an eye out on the place. You just never know how quickly something can go south and turn into a negative situation simply because you were not aware. And if you have any maintenance people that are on site ever, kind of use them as a resource to, say, hey, did you see anything? Is there anything going on over there? Is there a lot of trash? Is everything looking good? Something that could facilitate the renting situation, the rent collection situation is, if you're in a situation where you can allow online payments, or making it very easy for your tenants to be able to send that payment in. Okay, so those are just some of the few points that I wanted to talk to you about today. Obviously, we can go on and on and on about a lot of different things, but I kind of just wanted to give you a glimpse. So if you have any questions or comments, or if there's anything that you want further explanation on, like I said, feel free to reach out to us. And if already everything that I said kind of gave you a headache or is causing you major stress, feel free to reach out to us. We love to help you out. We love being able to help property owners and clients that just have property and they don't have the time because they're out busy having a regular life. Allow us to help you manage your property and turn that into a happy solution where you're actually gaining the benefits and not just having to deal with day-to-day headaches of things going wrong.